The stories have been told of kings in days of old, but there's no England now.
Should never have put me with that woman. Whose idea was that?
No, I didn't see it.
That's soon, I think. It's just ridiculous.
I'm not sure they'll go with that one.
They will go with it.
What did she say?
Oh, everything. She's just a sort of bigoted woman.
All the lies we were told.
We've talked about the upcoming elections in England and Gordon Brown calling a woman bigoted just for asking about their immigration policies. Joining us now from England for an update on what is going on is James Delingpole. James, welcome back to the Savage Nation.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me on your show again. Great to be here.
What's going on now in England with the election cycle?
We are very, very depressed over here and also very, very confused. Nobody, I think, knows what the result of this election is going to be. And part of the problem is that the three main parties campaigning to win, to become Prime Minister, etc., are essentially different variations of socialism light, which has ruined our economy these last 12 or 13 years. You may not be aware in America that Britain's economy is in almost a disastrous state as Greece's. Now, you might think the solution to that would be pretty radical measures. You might think, for example, that what we need is low taxes, that we need the government to essentially get out of our lives and let us start rebuilding our economy. Instead, what we're having is three political parties, all of which seem to model themselves on a mix between Tony Blair and Barack Obama. Our Conservative, for example, David Cameron, his heroes, his role models, get this, are Barack Obama, Tony Blair, and Saul Alinsky. Now, can you imagine how that makes a Conservative feel in Britain? You know, we are feeling as though, well, where do we go? Who do we vote for? Obviously, you can't vote for the Socialist Party. You know, that's Labour that's been in power these last 13 years. You can't vote for the other party, the Liberal Democrats, who essentially want us to be run by the European socialist superstate. And you can't vote Conservative either because he's not a real Conservative. He's the equivalent of a Rhino Republican. So basically, in Britain, we are totally screwed. And this is why, of course, nobody knows what is going to happen. Because something like 40% of the British electorate are undecided as to who they are going to vote for in Thursday's general election. And it could be that what we end up with is something called a hung parliament, which is essentially a recipe for chaos because it means nobody is in charge. You know, it means that the various parties have to bicker as to who inherits the reins of power, who gets to be Prime Minister, and of course all legislation that happens is going to be the result of horse trading. So nothing radical will get passed. None of the radical measures we need to rescue our economy and undo the damage that has been done by socialists for the last 13 years.
Well, how did Brown's comments go over? He's finished, huh?
I think that actually Gordon Brown was on a tour of the north of England, and one of his traditional supporters, a long-standing Labour voter, came up to him and gave him a few of her thoughts. And one of the things she discussed, she said to him that she was worried about immigration, as indeed a lot of people in Britain are. You know, we've had uncontrolled immigration, but indeed politically induced immigration. The Labour Party deliberately encouraged immigration in order to wipe out the Conservative base in Britain. It was a deliberate policy. Anyway, this woman raised some objections about this, and Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister, smiled politely and agreed, that he was very sympathetic. And then as soon as he got into the car, he referred to her as a bigoted woman. And what he didn't realise was that his mic was still turned on. So this became a massive scandal. I think it was partly built up by the media. It's true that Gordon Brown had defended one of his natural voters. On the other hand, bigoted woman isn't actually that strong a phrase. I think I think all it was the nail in the coffin of a guy who was going to die anyway. You know, Gordon Brown is like one of those crumbling Moscow Politburo chiefs from the 1970s. He's a bit like Brezhnev, you know, at one of those parades with all the SS-20 missiles rumbling past. He's on his way out. He's yesterday's man. What we don't know is who is going to replace this crumbling relic of a bygone age.
Well, what do you think will happen tomorrow come the elections?
I think there are what I think is going to happen, probably, is that the Conservatives are going to win with a small majority. And the only reason they're going to win is one word: fear. Nobody really wants to vote for the Conservatives because they don't know what they stand for, because they're not real Conservatives. But what people want even less is any more years of the appalling socialist regime of Gordon Brown and his cronies. I mean, these guys make Barack Obama look like Ronnie Reagan. They really do. They're appalling. So that is my number one prediction. But it could be that we have something called a hung parliament, where nobody wins, where there's no majority, and it's quite possible that what would then happen is that the country would grind to a halt and there would be chaos for a few months, and then there might possibly be another general election in which, you know, maybe in October, where the parties have to rebuild themselves and reformulate their policies and try and appeal more strongly to the voters that way. This happened once before in the early 1970s. It might happen again.
James Delingpole, thanks again for being on the Savage Nation.
Hey, Michael, thanks for having me anytime.
I'll be right back.